Keep watching The Politics every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Good afternoon. It's Friday, July 1st, and welcome to Talking Politics. We're going to have to redo that opening because, as you see, I no longer wear glasses. I am Robert Press, the host of this show, the official New York press reporter for the Bronx Chronicle, the Parkchester Times, Co-op City News, and Parrot TV. My co-host is Mr. Anthony RIVIECCIO, the founder of the Northwest Bronx the Northwest Bronx Democrats. And today's show, we're going to go over the June primary a little later in the show. And Mr. Anthony RIVIECCIO is going to bring out a Northwest Bronx exclusive a little later. Go ahead, Anthony. Introduce yourself, please.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Robert. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, our co-host, Mr. Press, might need his glasses back because it's obviously affecting his brain and his mouth. Welcome, everyone. My name is Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO. Some people might know me as the CEO of the Financial Advisors Group, celebrating its 26th year tomorrow, actually, July 2nd. Some people might know me as an adjunct professor of personal finance at both Urban Community College and Monroe College. And my third life, as Robert indicated, is that I am the founder, not an active member any longer, but a founder of Northwest Bronx Democrats here in the Bronx.
And Tony and I have known each other for about 25 years, Tony?
About.
And, you know, the one thing I like about Tony knows finance. And one of our regular segments on here is Bidenomics, which Tony will get into in a minute, because I have a couple of questions about what's going on with Joe Biden, Tony. Gas prices are still high. They didn't go down. Some people just took it down a nickel or a dime and kept the extra 18, part of the federal gas tax money. You go into a supermarket, it's outrageous. I mean, it used to be $3 a pound for butter. Now it's $4 or $5 a pound. What's happening with our economy, Tony? What's going on with Bidenomics?
Bidenomics, Bob, as you've indicated a moment ago, there is so many things going on. I obviously couldn't cover it in this small segment, but I will give you some highlights. I think we're, of course, are in a very troubling time. As we speak right now for the week, and from a stock market point of view, the week is not over yet, of course. It's not over till Friday at 4:30 at 4 o'clock. But as we speak, it is down 3% for the week. So I'm sure most people know that for the first half of the year, we're in the biggest decline in over 50 years since 1970. We're now over 20%. And it could be worse depending on the type of portfolio you have, because that 20%.
How is the Bob Press Index doing?
We'll get there in a second. So, so just to give you some ideas of the economic indicators that came out for the week. Of course, we'll talk more about this in more detail on the Financial Focus University TV show at 5 p.m. But Bob, to give you some examples, according to the U.S. government, you're making more money. You're making year over year 6%. But according to the government, year over year, you're not spending, because year over year, the consumer spending numbers are at 2.4%. Bob, it's good to know that you don't own a business, because business spending numbers just came out. Mm-hmm. And they are now the lowest in the course of the last 2 years, even prior to the pandemic. I think it's safe to say, right, although no numbers came out this week, but I think it's safe to say that the government, U.S. government, is not spending as much as they were a couple of years ago, right, when we had the pandemic in full force, economic stimulus checks were going out, right? None of that is happening now, right? You've got major decreases going on in consumer spending, business spending, government spending, and trade, as Joe Biden actually indicated himself when he went on his foreign trip. You know, the elements of trade with the United States, although it's 10% of our economy, is not as important as, of course, other factors. Here in the U.S., our important factor is consumer spending. But of course, in other countries, trade could be a lot bigger than 10%. It could be 20, 30, 40%. In our economy, it's only 10. So you take that 10, and yes, exports are going up, and the 90% where spending is going down. Well, I'm getting very worried about the state of our U.S. economy. When you join us to answer your last question about the Bob Press Index, please make sure you join us tonight at 5 p.m. We'll go over that in more detail. But if you decide to join us, Robert, please bring a tissue because you may not like reports, unless because the market's still open, unless something dramatic really happens in the last couple of hours in the market, which nobody can ever foresee. God forbid, something dramatic, either good or bad. But if the market closed today, the Bob Press Index is going to have some tissue paper with it. But you won't be the only one.
Well, let me ask you about the consumer spending, Anthony. We know stores are closing. We see street vendors who deal in cash. And some merchants, if you go into some of the takeout restaurants or whatever, the meal is $8. You give them a 10, they give you $2 back, and you don't hear that ching-ching from the cash register. So how is that part of the less consumer spending, the off-the-record income?
What I just shared with you are the consumer spending numbers of all defined, including what you've indicated. A little later on in our show, because I want to keep the show, of course, to the main focus being political, although I know we're in economics. But later on in our show, I'll be showing a chart. I think it's a very important chart that will show about what Joe Biden constantly talks about called supply chain, right?
It's on financial.
Now, Joe Biden has said, in regards to inflation, number one, he blames it on Russia. Number two, he says it's supply chain, right? Well, when you join us this afternoon at 5 o'clock, you'll be glad to know that the fees for supply chains since January have gone down. So one can reasonably conclude that, of course, there are some supply chain mechanisms taking place, but if the fees of the transaction are going down, and you will see this in a chart we'll be showing later on this afternoon, well, then obviously a lot of people, including myself, don't believe it's Russia. I personally don't believe it's the supply chains. So what could it be? Well, we'll have that answer at 5 o'clock today.
Okay, because we know in the past that the oil countries under OPEC tried to control the supply because as it is, supply and demand is what gears prices. The less supply, more demand, the higher the price. The more supply, less demand, the lower the price, correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, if these oil companies did it years ago and oil, gas was cheap back then, like you say, what's happening now? It can't be just Russia. But, I want to talk about affordable housing because
let me just say one thing in regards to that. Our president, in his press conference yesterday, indicated, he sort of backtracked a little bit. He said, yes, I'm meeting the Saudi government, but it's part of a bigger meeting. It was projected that him and the Saudi government were going to talk about the oil situation. And he sort of backtracked yesterday and said, oh, no, it's just part of a bigger meeting. And I'm going to be there and he's going to be there. And maybe we'll talk, maybe we won't. But they got him in a corner, Joe Biden. And Joe Biden said, if we do talk, I'm going to ask the Saudi government to increase production, which of course would lower the prices. And the Saudi government turned around and said, hey, we can talk about that. But then we could also talk about the security concerns that the Saudi government has with the government of Iran. So I just thought you should be aware of those things. Go ahead.
Well, no, I want to go into affordable housing now because we have something that's coming up in the Throgs Neck area. But as you do and I do, we put up these things that come in that housing lotteries or new buildings going up with affordable housing. And what is affordable to affordable housing? I mean, I look at these prices. It says affordable housing from $66,000 to $100,000 income. And I remember the fights that we had years ago about affordable housing, that people were making $20,000 a year. So who is this affordable housing for, Anthony? Do you know?
Bob, I think it's become very clear, at least in my mind. It might take a little while for it to be clear for others. We are now seeing the beginnings of a very predominant housing model. And it's going to happen right at the Bruckner. It's going to be 70 to 80%, let me call it middle class income. And because it's middle class income, and the other 20, 30% of it is affordable income, well, you just can't make it all that low, right? So you have to find some way to stay within the market rate, right? Which is where the 80% are going to be living in. So what you're going to have, in essence, is, again, I hate to put it in, well, let me put it in economic terms, where you're going to have a higher middle class group of people, irrespective of race, living here. That's going to be a 70%. The 30%, which would have been here, you're right about that, in the old days, 20, 30, 40 years ago, under the low income models and Section 8 models. But now under these affordable housing models, which again are lottery-based components, right? Well, we can't make it that low, right? Because these people, right, aren't going to like that, right? So we got to make it somewhat competitive, but not competitive to low-income people, competitive to middle-income people. So that's why when you say, oh, well, who can pay for it? Well, maybe it's by design. Maybe it's because these people, the ones that are going to be paying the real rent, right, are going to be upset if it's these group of people. So let's find a way that if these group of people can elevate here, that's good. But most of them, sadly, will not. So they'll get that small little 20, 30% that will be here. But the scope of the building compared to what would have been there 5, 10, 20 years ago, from an economic point of view, is going to be much more higher. So what does that mean to all neighborhoods? Well, you know what? 10 years from now, it's going to mean two things. Number one, the Bronx will grow economically. They will have a higher market value. Why? Because of the second reason. You're going to displace all of the low-income people because they can't afford that affordable housing that we're talking about.
And these houses that are being built, though, Anthony, unless they're subsidized and bring in the low-income people, are not getting full. They're standing half full because there's nobody in the middle-income bracket who can afford it.
Well, obviously, COVID slowed down developers' plans a great deal, but not totally, right? Because as we've been in a health-wide situation, which we still are, right? Because everybody says we're good to go, but COVID is still going up, right? COVID is still going up. But guess what? As COVID keeps going up, so do the buildings, right? They want you to stay home, right? They want you to be safe. They want you to come take your COVID shot. But as COVID goes up, the building construction keeps going up.
Well, let's talk a moment about that Food Town project. Okay, the community is opposed to it. It's trying to bring in 300 units, which they say will be affordable and low-income housing, where the Food Town on the corner of Crosby and Bruckner Boulevard sits. And it takes into account adjoining lots where 4 buildings will go up. Originally, there were 2 8-story buildings proposed, one of them on the corner where the Food Town is. The community board has opposed it. The councilwoman says she's against it. It went to the borough president's office, and now the borough president has suggested a sort of scaled back version with only 1 8-story tower and not on the corner where the Food Town was, but she says it should be no higher than 5 stories on the corner.
Robert, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right in your description of it. I think you're forgetting one very important factor, right? We can talk about buildings and all of that, but before we talk about buildings, let's talk about what's going to make it happen. And what's going to make it happen is that, and you're right, the community is against it. The community has proof they're against it. You know what that proof is? That proof is 15 years ago when they rezoned themselves in a down zoning program.
Right.
So they told you 15 years ago what they wanted. Today, or as of yesterday, the community said, we still want to be that way. The borough president said, I agree with the rezoning. You can restructure the buildings any way you want, and there's still debate about that. But you wouldn't have all this conversation unless the rezoning changed. So as I tell everyone, and I've said to you many times off camera, that to me is the biggest threat to community destruction. Once you allow for zoning changes, we can talk about 3 buildings, 9 buildings, community center, senior center. And all these, by the way, have problems, Bob. She made a proposal with the senior center, and a lot of people don't like her proposal. So, there's a lot of issues within this proposal. But before you even get into those issues, you wouldn't have any of it unless you had rezoning. So our borough president pretty much said, knowing what the community said in her public hearing, knowing what the community said 15 years ago when they voted it themselves, what they wanted to be, she basically said, as Eric Adams has been saying, we have to have it in our backyard to help New York, help people, help America. I'm going to approve this rezoning.
Well, this is going to be the test for the East Bronx. If it goes through as planned, the East Bronx will be just the rest of the Bronx. It won't be suburban area anymore. It'll be, those homes will go one by one as they are on Crosby Avenue, further up in Pelham Bay. These homes are going one by one. The big homes on the corner or with driveways and backyards, they go first. And then it's just a domino effect. It happened on your corner, Anthony. The corner house, you have an 8-story building.
I've been telling people, you're absolutely right, Bob. I have no problem talking about it. I've been telling people that if they want to know what quality of life destruction looks like, just come to our wonderful new community of Bedford Park, because you will not recognize it.
That's right.
There's no way you will recognize it.
All those beautiful
and get ready, Bob, because according to what I'm reading with the Bruckner rezoning and all of the projects within, it sounds like you're going to have a lot of those Soto buildings over there.
Oh, yeah, they're
exactly, right. Because that's exactly what the Soto building is.
Right across by the church are about 3 buildings that one of the people opposed says, yeah, well, if this goes through that building, and next, and then he's going down the whole line. It's
well, I don't know. It sounds like we've both seen the same article. If we're referring to the same article, we're talking about the Bronx Times, and the Bronx Times had a wonderful aerial shot of it. It's not just 3; it's 5. When you count all of the senior center, right? That's 1. The community center, right? So now it's 5, right? When you see that on an aerial, that's not a pretty picture.
Well, then you have the new business center going where the movie theaters were, which are a couple of blocks away. And that's why they raised the bridge, the Bruckner Boulevard Bridge, so the ships could go through with the containers, so the containers can just offload right to there. All right. What's the name of the? I forgot it. The delivery company, that's killing all the stores.
There's
no, it starts with an A, Anthony. Starts with an A. I forget it. That you call
Amazon.
Amazon. That's it. I don't know because I don't order.
Where are those glasses, Bob? All right, where are those glasses?
No, that's not glasses. That's up here because I don't order.
I know exactly.
Amazon. You could see all the business that Amazon has, and that came from those brick and mortar stores. People don't realize that, by calling up and having it delivered, they now are putting their little, their local merchants.
I think the bigger, you're absolutely right, but I think the bigger example from what you're saying, more in an economic sense, is look at the stores like Best I'm doing you now. Bed Bath and Beyond, right? Kohl's, right? IKEA. They're the ones that are really getting slammed with places like Amazon.
Well, all right, let's get into a little politics before we go to our first commercial in a few minutes. Let's do the governor's race right now. Any surprises in the governor's race on the Democratic side? Did we think Kathy Hochul was going to lose?
I thought she was going to win by 60%. I think I said it on this show before the election. The only surprise to me was that, I'm sure many people might disagree, I thought Jumaane Williams did fairly well. I really did. I thought, coming in second in a New York State-based race, I thought was respectable at best.
Right.
And I won't go any further than that.
And don't forget, he was kind of out of it a week before the primary with his wife giving birth, and then she had complications. So he really wasn't out there campaigning. His lieutenant governor candidate was campaigning. But
so the Northwest Bronx Democrats' first humble pie award goes to Tom Suozzi for imitating himself to try to be his governor candidate.
Now, what you'll see here, this is the statewide figures, which show that 864,968 voters voted statewide. In New York City, from the New York City Board of Election site, 446,432 voters voted, which shows that there are more voters that voted in New York City than the rest of the outside of New York City. Let's go to the lieutenant governor's race on that next, in the Democratic side, since we're here. Any surprises here?
No. Well, yes. Of course, Mr. Delgado would, have the support of county, all of the elements within. I thought, and I know I'm going to mess up her last name. I'll just say candidate Anna. I thought would have done better. I thought she had a good message. I know she went out and tried to reach as many people as she can.
Right.
Of course, she's a first-time candidate, but I thought she would have done better.
Right, and so did I. It's a shame. Someone who just came in on May 28th, okay, and they had to change the law so he can become lieutenant governor. Well, actually, to get on the ballot. Otherwise, she would have been running with Brian Benjamin, who, I thought a person was innocent until proven guilty. He's under indictment, but there are people who are indicted, and they say an indictment is only an accusal of guilt. It's not an admission, because people are innocent when they're indicted sometimes. For all we know, Brian Benjamin could be proven innocent. So, to be a judge, jury, and whatever, and say, no, you're guilty, I don't want you on my slate, is pretty bad by the governor. And
welcome to Politics 302.
And she's turning into almost Andrew Cuomo the second.
Yeah.
And
he looks prettier.
On the Republican side, Anthony, any surprises?
Yes. I didn't preference anyone in the Republican race, I don't believe. I generally wasn't sure about any of the candidates, but I also thought Andrew would have done better statewide. I thought the great anomaly in this race was that, if I understand the numbers correctly, Giuliani, of course, lost, but he actually won the borough of the Bronx.
Well, he won New York City, I believe, also. But,
okay.
But when we look at, I mentioned how many people voted statewide. Republicans, 446,773 statewide. However, when we get to New York City, only 50,337 people voted on the Republican line in the Republican primary, which tells you that you have 446,000 plus against 50,000 plus. It's almost.
Bob, I got to ask you an important question.
Yes.
So then, how influential is Bronx Republican Chairman Michael Rendino, who did not endorse Andrew Giuliani? Based on A, his endorsement, and B, the numbers you've just described, how important is Michael Rendino and the party to this process?
Well, who was pushing Andrew Giuliani in the Bronx?
Right, but again, I'm talking. That's got nothing to do with the question I'm asking.
Well, no, it was Gene DeFrancis who was pushing Andrew Giuliani in the Bronx, and Gene deserves a lot of credit for winning the Bronx for Andrew Giuliani. The fact that Lee Zeldin didn't win, where you have a lot of Orthodox Jews are Republican, tells you a lot. It really does. So
again, I'm going to ask you again that Michael Rendino and the Bronx Republican Party did not support Andrew.
No.
But Andrew won. And you can see the numbers from New York City, right? Versus statewide. Mm-hmm. So again, my question is so how important do you believe both the party and Michael Rendino as chair are to this process?
We have seen that the Bronx hasn't had a Republican leader since Guy Villela, who was a state senator. And there was a chance for a second person, John Calandra Jr., who was running for assembly, but it appears that Guy Villela didn't want to have any other Republican elected officials. And they, we could almost call it the Bronx, the Demo Club.
So then you're basically saying then that the Republican Party here in New York, as well as the Bronx, hasn't been influential in the last 30 years, because using the Guy Villela example, he was a staunch Republican up until 1990. Even though he lost, even though he stayed on until the late 90s, by the mid 90s, they were calling him Mr. Democrat.
Yeah.
So basically then that's what you're saying.
Unfortunately, the person who took over for him just had his wallet in mind, okay? And that's kind of what happens in politics. It's how much, all right? Not how good are you, but how much money do you have, all right? And Michael Rendino, unfortunately, is outnumbered 12-1 in the Bronx here. He has his one little enclave in the 82nd Assembly District, where John Sereni took, 35% of the vote in the race in the council race against Giuliani, against Jonai, if you remember.
Did the chair of the party endorse him? John Sereni?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay. And Cunningham won when he ran against AOC 2 years ago. Again, the 82nd is the last stronghold of the Bronx Republicans, and coming into this assembly race now, we'll see how strong they are. Because
what did Andrew get in the 82nd?
I don't have those numbers.
Okay, I believe it was in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. Well,
okay, so then that means that the Republican chair who endorsed and won his last race 2 years ago might have.
Anthony, before we go to break, I'm going to say one last thing, and you're probably going to give him a humble pie, or you should, because Rob Astorino, as I said, should have gone for Congress against Jamal Bowman or for lieutenant governor, because his numbers were atrocious. And let's go.
The only reason, Robert, that I'm not going to give him a humble pie award is because, at least with the humble pie awards, I give them to credible losers, right? I don't even consider Mr. Astorino credible. So to me, he's non-recognizable.
All right.
And as you can see, the numbers.
Okay. Anthony, we'll go into the assembly races when we come back from a break, and let's take a break right now as we see Kevin Diola talking about Bruckner, hundreds of trailers, and so. Well, you know what? Maybe you can pull them with your bikes, Kevin.
America Open Market, AO Market. The best digital market for humanity is a free multilingual borderless market open to international sellers with various languages included. With America Open Market, you may start selling in minutes after filling out the form. Comprehensive dashboard where you understand your sales, orders, and customers is available. You get paid directly, securely, and instantly on the America Open Market. You can sell your house, car, electronic laptop, CD player, boombox, phone, headphones, furniture, and clothing, and anything on AmericaOpenMarket.com where all your sales and customer needs are met. Register as a merchant today. You will not regret becoming a vendor at America Open Market. For further inquiries, contact us at aomarket@gmail.com. AO Market, best digital marketplace for humanity.
Welcome back to Talking Politics, July 1st, 2022. Anthony, why don't we go into our local Bronx assembly races, which consider assembly and any district leaders and county committee or whatever. And instead of going up, let's work from the 87th down, okay? Because I know the last two races, there will be humble pie awards. So let's start with the 87th Assembly District, where there were only a race for male district leader and county committee. All right, the male district leader seems to be going every 2 years to a different person. 8 years ago, it was with somebody. Then 6 years ago, Mr. John Parrot.
Bob, no one can read that. You got to say who these people are.
This is not my table. All right. In the 80s.
Bob, wait a second. You're talking about a race. Who were the participants?
This I have no idea. Okay, he's in the. That's the 4th Assembly District we're in. All right, this is coming from the state. Let's just talk. 87th Assembly District, male district leader. William Rivera got 3,005 votes, 70.69% of the vote. Justin Westbrook Lowry, the incumbent, had 1,230 votes, which is 28.92%, and there were 18 write-ins for about 0.5%. In total, 4,253 votes. Now, in past elections, there's been 6,000 to 8,000 votes in that district. One thing we should say, people in the Bronx did not come out this time. They had a county committee race in the 87th Assembly District, which I found funny. There were 4 people on one side, on the county side, against one person who was running against the county side. Now, that person made it to the county committee, Pamela Stewart Martinez, our friend. It's interesting that her husband, Victor Martinez, was on the county side. Also winning was Julia Rodriguez, who must be about 98 years old. And Maxine Lathium made it in there. And one of the county people did not make it. When we go down to the 86th Assembly District, we only had a race for assembly.
Wait a minute, Bob, before you go into the 86th, I believe you were starting to say something about Mr. Justin Westbrook Lowry that I interrupted.
Oh, okay. It seems that every 2 years there's a new district leader. Okay, it's now William Rivera. Justin Westbrook Lowry won it 2 years before. Before Justin, 2 years before him, it was John Perez, who was running for state senate in the 34th Senate District now. Before him, it was somebody else. So let's hope William can hold the seat for more than 2 years. All right, so that's the history of the 87th. There was no primary for assembly or any other position. There are 2 district leaders. There's a male district leader and a female district leader, and there is a male and female state committee. Those had no primary. In the 86th Assembly District, only Yudeka Tapia, the assemblywoman, had a primary. She had a primary against Community Board 5 Secretary Pooh Stewart, and she trashed Miss Stewart with 2101 votes, 2,101, over 81% of the vote, while Miss Stewart got only 453 votes, or 17.5%. Surprisingly, there were 27 write-ins for about 1% in there. And congratulations to my old friend, Miss Yudeka Tapia, who was one of my co-presidents when I was president of District 10's President's Council in my earlier political life. Now, it seems that the 84th Assembly District...
Robert, before you jump from place to place, again, you have a co-host, or have you forgotten again?
Well, you're so
I
quiet.
also would like to congratulate our Northwest Bronx Democrats candidate of over the last 15 years, Miss Yudeka Tapia, on what I believe was a resounding victory, of which I'll be talking more about when we talk about the 78th Assembly District.
All right. Well, you're right. You're so quiet. You're normally so boisterous. I forgot about you. The 85th Assembly District had no races, no primary in the 85th Assembly District. We'll go down to the 84th Assembly District, where they were fighting like cats and dogs. Amanda Septimo, the incumbent assemblywoman, just staved off the challenge by Alberto Torres and Hector Feliciano. She won with 49.76% of the vote. Mr. Torres got 35% of the vote, and Feliciano 15% of the vote. Assemblywoman Septimo wound up with 1,783 votes on election day. Mr. Torres had 1,252. There were 528 for Mr. Feliciano and 20 write-ins. 3,582 people voted on election day. Early voting is not counted in here, I don't believe. And no, it is voting. Yeah, early voting should be counted in here too, Anthony, because they have the final numbers. And the only thing to go is the absentee ballots, which really shouldn't make a difference. Yeah. Male district leader, there were 4 candidates. Mr. Feliciano, who ran for assembly, edged out Carlos Sierra Gonzalez, 1107 to 985. Coming in third was James Duckett with 580, and Oswald Dennis of the Ruben Diaz Sr. team came in last with 466 votes. So they were 152. Now, how can you have less votes for male district leader, not the same for assembly? Because sometimes people just vote for the assembly. On the female district leader side, former assemblywoman Carmen Arroyo took the female district leader with 1,569 votes. Yolanda Garcia, a local activist, came in second with 966. And then there was Sonia Taylor with 834 with 9 write-ins. And here, 3,378 people voted. There were more than 2,026 votes for the female, because obviously Carmen Arroyo brought in a lot of people. Any comments on the district leaders, or should I go to the rest of the race?
No, I have several. First and foremost, let me congratulate who I believe is the real winner in that race, and that winner is Carmen Arroyo. Carmen Arroyo has shown that she will be what we like to call the true behind-the-scenes player in that political district. On a one-on-one basis, Amanda Septimo, based on these numbers, and again, keep in mind, she lost against Carmen 2 years ago when Carmen wasn't even supposed to be on the ballot. These numbers today represent that in a heads-up race, if this was a heads-up race, Amanda will be, she'd be, of course, the winner, but she'd be the winner at 63%. So on a straight-up Democratic race, for her to get 63% shows me she's still very weak in that area. And of course, Carmen doing what she did as district leader and then beating Amanda 2 years ago, I think Amanda has to find a way to galvanize her power, because obviously Carmen Arroyo still has her.
neither
And I
call.
would also say, again, Mr. Dennis, I know personally, good man, first-time candidate. Dennis, you got to get better. So, Dennis, you are the recipient of the Northwest Bronx Democrats Humble Pie Award for 2000.
Yeah, stop listening to the Reverend.
Huh?
Stop listening to Reverend Diaz.
Oh,
Oswald Dennis.
he stopped?
He should stop listening to.
He should stop.
The Reverend was probably helping him. Okay, there were also state committee positions, which Miguel Torres handily won with 2,211 votes, or 72%, over Angel Vargas, who got 841 votes, or 27%. Female state committee was a four-way race, but Ana Montoya squeaked it out with 1,253 votes. Linda Duke got 856. Clarissa Ayalato, 571. Francis Sosa got 511 votes. Judicial delegates, congratulations to William Rodriguez, Angel Vega, Joanna Torres, Evelyn Cosme, Elba, forgive me for the last name, Chuelo, Carlos Sierra Gonzalez made it as a judicial delegate, and he got more votes than he got for male district leader. He wound up with 1,130 votes for the judicial delegate. Robert Barnes, a familiar name, also made it, and a very familiar name, William Russell Moore, made it, along with Clarissa Ayalto and Edward Barreto. That's the 84th Assembly District. Any comments there?
No, sir.
Okay, let's move on to the 82nd Assembly District, where there was only a race for the Assembly and for the male district leader in Part A, and one of the candidates was in both races, Mr. Al Quattlebaum. And the winner of the Assembly race was Michael Benedetto with 4,353 votes, or 56% of the vote. Jonathan Soto came in with 2,794 votes at 36%, and Al Quattlebaum came in with 598 votes, or 8%. There were 20 write-ins for a total of 7,765 votes. Now, that's a healthy vote count. People came out there. Mr. Quattlebaum also lost the male district leader race to James Payne. Mr. Payne gathered 2,445 votes, or 63%, to Mr. Quattlebaum's 1,436, and there were 14 write-ins. And here's the difference, but Part A is only the top half of Co-op City, so you'll see about half the vote at 3,695. The 82nd Assembly District is the only Assembly District that will have 4 district leaders, because it's split into Part A, Co-op City, and Part B, Throgs Neck. So that's the take on the 82nd. I personally think Mr. Benedetto has to watch his back. He told me years ago he was afraid of a primary. This was when Senator Klein lost. I said to Mr. Benedetto, if you, Mr. Dinowitz, and the Assemblywoman at the time, Ms. Fernandez, had primaries, none of them had primaries the year Jeff Klein lost, that maybe Jeff Klein could have come out with a couple of more votes from your support. And Mr. Benedetto said, oh, no, I didn't want a primary. I might have lost. And Giulio Samatelli, Mr. 1%, got 19% 2 years ago against Mr. Benedetto. So
Bob, you know what? That's a very good number, because using the same math, right, that I just used a minute ago, if Benedetto ran this race head up, he would have gotten 80%. So that tells me that even though it's lower, I said in a heads-up race. So that tells me that even though, of course, 80% is better than the last race we were just talking about, but that tells me that both he's respected in his district, but also, too, and you're right, those numbers are going down. That 80% used to be 95%. So those numbers are going down slower than most areas, but still going down. Jonathan Soto, I think Jonathan Soto has to find a way to get his message out. I think, according to reports that I hear, I think Jonathan has to start doing some real community work first
He has to be involved in the community. Now, we're going to go.
Hold on, Bob. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Am I done with the district? Are we having a problem here?
No, we need to move on, Tony, because
we don't need to move on. I need to finish. You have a problem with that?
No, go ahead. What else?
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to talk about Mr. Quarterbaum for a moment. Is that okay?
There's really nothing to say about Al.
Of course there's something to say. I have a Northwest Bronx Democrat award to give him. Is that all right with you?
Oh, okay. I didn't think you were going to give him this award.
Yeah, because you're not thinking again. Put your glasses on for the 5th time. You have a co-host, and don't let me tell you again. Al Quarterbaum, congratulations. You just won your Northwest Bronx Democrats Humble Pie Award. And we might be making a special one for Mr. Press if he does it again.
Well, one question, Anthony. Did he bake it himself since he's a restaurateur?
No, it looks like you made it for him.
Okay, we're going to skip the 81st Assembly District. The 80th Assembly District had no races because there was no primary. And if we can have that picture back up.
Wait a minute, Bob. I do think I'll let you dictate when. But I do think we do have to spend a moment on the 80th Assembly District because party people have changed.
Can we come back to the 80th after?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Can we get that picture back up? We're going to go to the 78th Assembly District. The picture you saw was Jose Rivera talking to George Alvarez, saying, "Oh, you want to run for my seat? Oh, go listen to the Reverend here. He'll keep you," because George Alvarez 2 years ago ran for the 79th Assembly seat, and he was on the Ruben Diaz ticket when Ruben Diaz ran for Congress against Richie Torres. Also in the photo is Mr. John Perez, who ran for state senator on the Diaz ticket. Now we saw in the 78th Assembly District that Mr. Alvarez was with Congressman Adriano Espaillat, and he was with Congressman Richie Torres, council members Oswald Felice and Perina Sanchez. And what happened in the 78th Assembly District Assembly race? Mr. George Alvarez came in with 1,860 votes for 47% of the vote. Coming in second, unfortunately, the Admiral ship sank with 1,107 votes, or 28%. And Emmanuel Martinez, with his $400,000 from the Wall Street, with his trucks all over the place, only got 956 votes, or 24%. And the 25 votes that were write-ins probably went to Shaniqua Charles. So a total of 3,948 votes in that district, which is a very high number. Would you like to say anything about the assembly race, Tony?
I like to say a lot of things about that particular district, more so because technically now I live in it, right? As I mentioned to you much earlier, this race was going to be about the new boundary, not the old one. So, in saying all that, I have a lot of things to say about this particular race. I think there's a wonderful article that just came out about the assemblyman and the district by a gentleman by the name of Howard Jordan. He's a Latino writer, and I know with his reach, this article will be going out, I'm sure, New York wide. And he talks about the assemblyman in his resume, but he also talks about how the neighborhood is changing. And I think the biggest winner here is Congressman Espaillat. Mm-hmm. Many people knew that, or old timers like myself, knew that the southern part of the district was, of course, changing in a lot of different ways. Many people did not believe that that change would overcome the district. And I'm not saying that it is, because there are indications that I'll share in a second that it isn't. But congratulations to Mr. Alvarez, congratulations to Mr. Espaillat. And you should know, Bob, the reason why I call him the Admiral is not because he's the Admiral of the ship. I call him the Admiral because now he used to be, of course not any longer, the admiral of the old Bronx Democratic Party. Today, and I'm not talking now, titles. I'm talking street people. Street people always considered Jose to be the admiral. Today, I would not say it's George Alvarez in this district. Now, I might go as far as saying that Adriano Espillad received a promotion. I think the Humble Pie Award should definitely go to, and let me say it officially, the Northwest Bronx Humble Pie Award should go to Emmanuel Martinez. Even though Emmanuel was a first-time candidate, he was also chairman of Community Board 7. He also, as you indicated, received $400,000. Now, most people figured all of that would have been helpful, right? Well, I had a lot of doubts about that on primary day. On primary day, I spent a significant amount of time in the upper part of the district where I live in Bedford Park. And I as I told you off camera, and I'll say it now, I could not have found a crazier situation when I went to one particular polling site. I won't mention the one. And out of a total of maybe 15 people, 10 of them were from Alvarez. I would say 3 or 4 of them were working. The other 6 had on music and they were dancing. And 2 people that I saw that had Moving New York t-shirts on them that were representatives for Emmanuel Martinez. Well, they decided to join in on the dancing. Right? So, were they there? Yeah. Were they doing the mambo better than the Espanol people or the Alvarez people? Absolutely. But in seeing this, I had to grab one of the women. And I just said to her very gently, because I wasn't picking any side. I said to her very gently, I said, "Don't you work for Emmanuel Martinez?" And she looks at me and she goes, "Martinez who?" So, so the Humble Pie Award goes to Emmanuel Martinez. But as an honorable mention, I do believe that even though Congressman Espillad now has a hold on the district, when you talk about Alvarez, when you talk about, all of the people that he's endorsed, on the other side of the coin, Angel Santana, who won the district leader race,
won big.
I won it very handily. I was very surprised. I think, and I'm sure he could be thinking, that maybe he might be the only legitimate leader, or attempt to be the other original leader to maybe break that Espionage stranglehold. If we had Assemblyman Rivera here today, and according to his statements, he says that he's retired, but he still loves his community and wants to stay involved. If that's
all right, true, we're running short on time, Anthony.
Angel Santana about that.
Okay, I just want to make the comment that Jose, unfortunately, was a victim of redistricting because 10 years ago, he lost his county leadership during a redistricting year. And now, 10 years later, he loses his seat during a redistricting year. Jose will say now, you know what? I'm on vacation now. I'm going to enjoy myself for the first time in I don't know how many years, because every year he was in politics, he really had no family life. Now he's going to have a family life of his own. All right. As you said, Angel Santana won the male district leader. Maria Gonzalez won the female district leader. Rafael Martinez won the male state committee. Rachel Bradshaw won the female state committee. Jose Rivera did make it as the leading state judicial delegate there. And we're going to move on to the 81st because
before we do, just to finish up on the 78th, because you're right in the way you're describing it. I want to describe it a little bit more visual, because when we talk about the 81st and the 80th, I think it's time to now get more visual. Okay, in regards to the 78th, George Alvarez won. But when you talk about a party you're talking about the assembly, 2 district leaders, 2 state committee people, right? We're going to forget the other people for a moment. So that's a tree, right? 1, 2, 2. FBI only controls 60% of that tree. He deserves congratulations.
All right.
But there's 40% that he doesn't.
Let's move to the 81st, where Assemblyman Dinowitz won re-election with 62% of the vote on election day. Jessica Altagracia Walford got 37.5% of the vote on election day. There were 9,381 votes cast. Congratulations, Assemblyman Dinowitz. I had said that Assemblyman Dinowitz would lose. I thought the power of AOC, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, would follow through with Ms. Walford, but obviously it appears that she has done worse than candidate George Diaz 2 years ago. And could it have been that the AOC magic didn't work here in the Northwest Bronx? The big thing is, though, Anthony, and here's
what worked, Bob? You know what worked? It wasn't the AOC magic. Get ready, because I'm going to give you my interpretation of it.
All right, let me finish with the who won bit, okay?
Go ahead.
The male district leader was Eric Dinowitz 2 years ago. He didn't run. Radmat Singh came ahead of William Weitz, who was the chief of staff to Elliot Engel. He got 4177 votes to 3838 for Mr. Weitz, of which over 8,000 votes were cast. However, as we spoke, Anthony, there's only a 339 vote lead, and it depends on how many absentee ballots there are and who they went for. Mr. Weitz could still pull this out, but it looks like he's not. On female district leader, Randy Martos, the chief of staff of Mr. Dinowitz, Assemblyman Dinowitz did not run. Abigail Martin is the new female district leader with almost 54% of the vote over Miss Sarah List, who had 32% of the vote, and Carolyn Smith wound up with 14% of the vote. 8194 votes were cast. Congratulations, Abigail Martin, who ran for city council last year. You now are the female district leader, and it could be a good position to run again for city council. Male state committee man, Michael Heller just squeezed out a win over Aaron Stamen. He got 56% of the vote to Aaron's 43.5%, with 0.5% going to write-in. And the female state committee woman, which at one time was Helen Morick, I believe, of the Ben Franklin Club, is now Joanna. Nope, it's not. It's Morgan Evers, who sneaked in with 37.25% of the vote with 2954 votes. Joanna, forgive me for the name, Ron Edmondson got 2897. So that's a lead of 57 votes. We'll see if it can hold up. Zuma Gonzalez wound up with 2,045 votes in that race. So that's a tight race for female state committee. There were a couple of county committee races where Jessica Haller got the most votes in the 25th election district. She was not on the Jeffrey Dinowitz slate. In the 35th Assembly District, there was one member who got in that was not on the Jeffrey Dinowitz slate.
Robert, I'm only saying this because we're cutting short on time. So let me give you a little 81st analysis, then we'll close the show. So I'm going to give the Northwest Bronx Democrats Humble Pie Award in the 81st Assembly District to the Ben Franklin Club, because even though Jeffrey Dinowitz won and Assemblyman Dinowitz, congratulations, at the end of the day, talking about a party tree, right? Jeffrey Dinowitz is no longer in control of his 81st Assembly Party. All he has now is himself and Mr. Haller, who could, but I don't suspect.
Miss Haller. Michael Heller.
I'm sorry. That could possibly lose, although I don't think he will. So that means 60% of that tree is no longer his. Mm-hmm. However, a new significant part of that 40%, 60%, right, that isn't his, a lot of that now belongs to Christian Amato. So Christian Amato deserves a significant amount of credit for helping people like Morgan Evers, who first put her name out there 2 years ago, to the new district leader, Mr. Singh, who Jeffrey just laughed off and found out it wasn't worth laughing. So I think and then of course, Jeffrey might lose even more power, because if the county state Senate candidate wins, well, we know that wasn't a Ben Franklin pick. So that actually makes the power of Ben Franklin even weaker, in my opinion. So, because obviously you can see by these numbers, they weren't that strong. So, and we knew that 2 years ago in the non-Riverdale area where Jeffrey won his race, but the tree lost. So Jeffrey has a lot of reorganizing to do in the 81st, but congratulations to Mr. Dinwiddie.
We're just showing some pictures of Anthony with Assemblyman Dinowitz and soon-to-be former Assemblyman Jose Rivera. And, well, maybe I'll get a call from Jose to write that book, because Jose said, oh, you and I should write a book with all we know about politics. But it's going to be a big loss of Jose Rivera, and let's hope that Mr. Alvarez can become a better assemblyman and work for the people. Any final comments, Anthony? You wanted to say something about the 80th Assembly District?
I think the 80th Assembly District is noteworthy to mention, even though there was no race, of course, talking about the tree, right? Well, we got right in the 80th Assembly District, you basically now have a brand new tree, right? You don't have the same female district leader anymore. You don't have the same female state committee woman anymore. You know, and that goes on the male side, right? So forget who's on top. And right now we know who's on top. It is Assemblywoman Fernandez, who's already told you, yeah, guys, I'm on top, but I'm leaving, right? So now you got a tree, right? That's not just brand new, but with no leader.
Right.
Are you curious about
woman? But all right, we'll talk more on this next week. We'll go into the Senate races and congressional races, we'll talk a little more about Assemblywoman Fernandez, who ran for borough president. Now she's running for state senate. But
Are you curious about financial literacy? Then take a look at Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, if how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation. And this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO, your financial